What's up guys, Michael3D here again from Team Curse.NA. I'm going to be showing you a couple customizable settings you can use for crosshairs. Maybe you weren't familiar with coming from other games like me. It took me a while to figure out some of the settings and you know, see how they could help me. I wasn't used to CS style crosshairs, so you know, I did a lot of customizing early on, trying to figure out what I was going to be comfortable with and what worked best for me. And I'll go over some of these here for you real quick. Now, the crosshair I'm using right now is called a classic static crosshair, where it does not move, or open up rather, when I move. It does when you shoot, kind of expands a little bit there. And this is what I've been using here lately, and it's got a dot in the center, as you can see, and I feel like it translates pretty well once you know how the guns fire and when you should stop. Okay, and if you were like me early on, the most common, let me move this out of the way for you guys, the most common thing I think for me to use was the default crosshair, which you can get to from the main menu here in the settings. I use green, use the, you know, a really like bad resolution for it. At 8:6, this crosshair looks gigantic. It's really fuzzy. It's hard to see stuff at a distance because the crosshair was so big, you know. And a lot of people call this the transformer because it opens up. It does a bunch of funky things. I learned to like it early on because I was new to the game. So maybe if you're like me and you're just now getting into CS and never really learned the style of shooting, you can learn a lot from this crosshair. Okay, I'll tell you why. First off, you've got the dot right in the center, which is really nice coming from other games. Playing Quake, like Wolfenstein, Enemy Territory, Brink, any of those games, you could use like just basically a tiny crosshair like a dot. So I really like the aspect of that. Okay, it's always in the center of your screen. You don't have to worry about that. The other big thing was this crosshair opens up when you move. So when you're moving around and you want to be accurate, you know, you had to stop. You know, if you don't stop, your gun goes all over the place. Your bullets go all over the place. So this crosshair is dynamic, so it allowed me to know when to strafe and stop, and then when I was accurate, you know. And I think that helped me a lot early on as well. The other thing are these other little tiny crosshairs that expand the widest. You see them on the outside of the crosshair right now, but when I'm standing still, there's two horizontal and two vertical. Okay, and what these are kind of show the spread of the gun. So for me, for instance, I would watch the top crosshair there, the top portion of the crosshair, and it kind of gave me an idea of how much I needed to pull down with every weapon. Since every weapon was different, it kind of gave you the spread of the gun. So now not only did you have the spread, but you had, you know, not necessarily the recoil, but you knew when to stop to shoot the gun, and you could still use the dot to aim early on for the head, but then you just use the top portion of the crosshair to pull down and kind of get the general idea of where the bullets were going to go with the spray. So let me just kind of show you here. You see the top portion kind of expands. You can kind of use it as a general guideline. Let me turn some infinite ammo on here. You can kind of use it as a general idea of how much to pull down with the crosshair, and you know, I think that really helped me out early on. Since I didn't know how the gun shot, you know, coming from other games, it was a little different. So now, if you're like me, you tried a few different things out, not really sure what you like, I'm just going to move on next. Default static crosshair. Okay, this is standard. Now there's a setting in here I'm going to show you, which is fixed crosshair gap. I think the default is 3. I personally always liked it around like 7 or 9 because it gave you a little room to aim with the dot. You know, the crosshair wasn't in the way on the outside. And what you don't have here, like you do on the regular default crosshair, is the opening, the expanding lines and stuff. So this really doesn't detract from what you're viewing. You know, you can kind of just aim with it if you want. Actually, one of the cool things you can do with this crosshair is if you change the gap big enough, either positively or negatively, you can actually go negatively with it. But if you set it high, then all you have on your screen is a dot for your crosshair. So if you are that type of player, maybe you're a Quake guy or Unreal Tournament guy or something, and that's what you're used to, then you can just use the dot to aim with. You know, personally, I've tried it. It's really good for headshots, but I feel like I lose it too much, and I do better when I have something else to help aim when I'm trying to pull down. That way my pull down is straighter. So change this back here. So for instance, having the lines there help me pull down in a little straighter fashion. Okay. Gonna go ahead and move on to the next crosshair here. This is more of a standard crosshair that you'll see here for Counter-Strike. Sorry about that. I'm gonna change a couple of these settings here. So standard is green. The size is usually like 5. The gap is usually around 0. And I'm going to talk about all these settings. Just give me 1 second. Usually not a dot. Okay, this is usually the standard crosshair you see for most Counter-Strike games. I think it's what most people are used to seeing. Okay, this is all fine and dandy. Personally, I don't think the gap is big enough. Maybe if you're shooting a long-range target, but I feel like the crosshair is so close together that I have trouble aiming with the center of it. Like everything's just covered up. It's hard to tell what you're aiming at all the time. Like I feel like tracking is a lot easier with some form of a dot on your screen. And openness around it, but this is a classic crosshair that you're probably used to seeing, and maybe that works for you. A lot of pros use that, and it's preference at the end of the day. But personally, I don't like it. So go over a few settings here with you real quick. Start off with the alpha. Alpha is basically the translucency of the crosshair. So 0 is going to be completely gone. You can't see it. 255 is max, so that makes it the brightest. I like somewhere in between, and the reason is because depending on how big the crosshair is, sometimes you want to be able to see what's behind it if you're aiming at an enemy. And when it's set to 255, you can't really see anything behind it. But if it's set to something a little lower, like per se 150, you can still see the enemy if you're aimed at him, and you can see what's behind the portion of your crosshair that you're covering. So that's something to think about there. It's preference though at the end of the day, so whatever works for you. Next up is going to be color. Okay, we've got a standard is going to be green, which is 1. 2 is yellow. You can get to all these in the menu. 3 was blue. 4 was light blue. 5 is custom. Okay, so when you set to custom crosshair, what that means is you can change the red, the green, and the blue here, depending on what color you want it. So for instance, you can see the blue for me. Or my red, green, and blue was 255 here. So that gives me a white crosshair. That's what you see on my screen right now. If you want, for instance, the red, you would just set the red to 255. If you wanted something in between that isn't a normal color that you have option to, you can do that. So, for instance, if you want pink, I know one of my teammates actually uses pink. You set the blue and the red to max, and then you've got a pink crosshair. And you can do any shade you want. Like white is 255 on everything. If you want black, you set everything to 0 actually, which isn't a bad crosshair, to be honest. It's one of the only colors that shows up in the lighter areas of the sky, but this is definitely one of the colors that you would want the alpha to max. It's going to show up really nice for you. There are a lot of darker colors in the game, but a lot of people have trouble seeing, losing their crosshair on walls or anything lighter color. But the black actually shows up really well. I wish the crosshairs weren't like that, but that's unfortunately how it is on CSGO. So, alright, I'm just going to change the color back to 1 here. Next up, we're going to do is the Crosshair Gap, which standard is 0. I've seen a lot of pros use -1. It just makes it smaller. There's a smaller hole there. Which, if that's what you're used to, it's just a tiny cross. That's great. I personally don't like to aim with the crosshair portion. I like to have a gap, more of a gap in between there, so that I can aim with a dot, if that makes sense. If you do the gap larger, it makes it bigger for you, which it would be kind of hard to be super accurate since you got a gigantic field of crosshair there. So what a lot of people will do is change and put a dot in there, which is kind of like what I do, and then you have you got a crosshair that you can aim with, you can pull down with, you can use everything to line it up with, and then you've got a dot in the center to be super accurate. So let's see, the gap, you can actually do that in negative numbers. So for instance, if you want to do -10, which will do some funky things if you turn on a dynamic crosshair, which is kind of weird. It'll actually go inward instead of outward. So personally, I like to use 7. I like to use the dot on. Let's look at the crosshair size now. So the size is the actual, it's how long the crosshair is going to be on each end. So for instance, if you use like a 3, I know a lot of people like to use a crosshair that's really tiny with a small gap, and you know, that works for them, you know, and that's fine. You know, it's really good for hitting heads. Personally, I feel like I lose the crosshair more than it helps me, so I like something a little larger. The size, you can go up if you want. You know, you can use something gigantic if that works for you. You know, some people, maybe that's what they want. If you just want a dot on your screen, you can use crosshair 0. Okay, and then you have a tiny dot. Now you might say, well, that dot's really small. You can actually change that. You can go to crosshair thickness. Mine's at 0.75, for instance. Maybe you want to put it to 2. That's a much bigger crosshair that you can see and aim with, and if that's your sort of thing, that's what you want to do, then you know, go right ahead. Like I said though, I always felt like the dot, even though some of my teammates use it, it's hard to keep track of, and it's hard to know exactly how much to pull down and stuff, just out of personal experience. So change this back here. I use color 5 since it's custom, and then I use crosshair size to 7, and then I use the white crosshair color, so that's going to be blue 255, oops, 255, green to 255, and red to 255. Oops, I must have... There we go. Okay. So that gives you the white crosshair. Like I said, you can change it depending on whatever you like, whatever's going to work best for you. Let's go through here. I think that's just about it for crosshair commands. You have the gap, the size, the scale, the size. The style just changes it from default crosshair. There you go. Default crosshair right there to default static, which I didn't show you this earlier, but the fixed crosshair gap, you can actually go negative numbers in as well. If you want a funky looking crosshair, you can, it basically inverts itself. You can do that. And obviously, you know, that's your thing, that works. Crosshair style 2 is the standard classic crosshair that opens up when you move, which I like to use 4 because it doesn't, it's a static. Crosshair 3 though is a dynamic crosshair, so it opens up when you move. And you know, I would probably like this crosshair more if it didn't open up so much. The amount that it opens up though is not adjustable to my knowledge, and I think it was in other games like Source and stuff, and I've heard of a few other players comment about it, but you know, I kind of wish Valve would fix that so you could change it. So, but that's definitely something you could play with if that's your thing. Crosshair 4 though is the static crosshair. You probably see more pros use that than you see anything else, just because it doesn't move and it's easier to keep the crosshair on a target and be accurate with it if it's not expanding all the time. So. The only other thing I can really show you about crosshairs are the target IDs, which HUD_show target ID is set to 1 for me. Okay, and what this does is, let me add a bot here to show you. Alright. Nope, okay, didn't add a bot apparently. There we go. that time. Go, everyone. Okay, so as you can see, here's a bot, and when I'm aiming at him, the enemy target name tag shows up here. Actually, let me get him to stop. All right, so the enemy, the target basically shows up under the crosshair with the name. Okay, and that's good if you like it. Personally, I like to use it on. It's a little delayed, but you can use it to your advantage. When a smoke is dissipating, you could actually see their name tag show up before you can usually see a person, so that's something to think about. If you use the other style crosshair, the default one, what you're going to end up having is the crosshair actually lights up red as well. So not only do you get a name, but then the crosshair changes colors. So I actually played like that for a while, and it might take a little getting used to, but it can be a good thing, because if your crosshair lights up, you're more prone to be ready and ready to shoot at somebody, even if you're have a smoke right in front of you. So let's see if I can get it to work here. I'm gonna show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so basically, I can't see him through the smoke right now. Aimed right at him. As it starts to dissipate, hopefully you're going to be able to see maybe his name tag, maybe the crosshair light up here. See, I could see the name tag pop up just slightly before I could see him and before I would probably shoot. And that's something to think about. With the normal crosshair that most Counter-Strike players use, you're not going to have that option of the crosshair lighting up, but the name tag will show up. So that's something you can mess with there. The only problem with that is when you use the default crosshair, the big gigantic transformer looking thing, and you look at a teammate, you're gonna have a big red or a big I think it's a green X that shows up, green or yellow X above their body, that basically is saying don't shoot me. So it's something to take in mind there if you're using that. But that's going to just be about it, guys, for crosshair settings. Find something that's comfortable for you. Play with it for a while. Don't change every hour and say, well, this crosshair sucks. Try it out for a good couple days, a week or something, and then you'll get a better understanding of how the crosshair works and what's going to work better for you. If you're changing stuff all the time, you're not going to do as well. I personally feel, and the best thing is to give it some time sometimes. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Facebook at CRS Michael3D. Follow me on the stream at Michael3D TV on Twitch, and would really appreciate it if you like us on our Team Curse CS page on Facebook, or even our personal ones. Follow us on Twitch as well.